But in the studio, joining me live, Lindsey German for the Coalition of Resistance and Sam Bowman from the Adam Smith Institute. Let's start with you, Lindsey. Should we veer towards Paris and spending and growth, or should we stick with Germany?
Well, I think that it's very, very clear that what the electorates of Europe have been saying this week, particularly in France, is a very clear message that they don't want any more austerity. They do want more money spent on things like unemployment. Unemployment is over 10% across the whole of the Eurozone, which is the highest it's ever been. People are having to work longer and longer before they get their pensions, which is crazy in a situation where you have such high unemployment. And I think there has to be a very big change. We don't want a situation that we had in the early 1930s, where the Wall Street crash and the slump were met with austerity policies which led to complete disaster in Europe and led indeed to fascism.
You see, I don't know if anyone's ever accused you of this before, Lindsey, but are you not adopting there a kind of Mary Poppinsian view? And you're all about the spoonful of sugar and you're not about the medicine, because who's going to pay for it? Where's the money going to come from?
I think people have maybe accused me of being Mary Poppins before, or Pollyanna, or any of those kind of things. I don't think it's unrealistic. It's not unrealistic for millions of people in France to say they want better lifestyles. They don't want their living standards cut. They want secure jobs. And where the money is going to come from is from taxing companies and the rich, and from cutting areas which at the moment are sacrosanct.
But already in the City of London, it's being predicted that the rich are going to be stung at 75%. Will simply decamp. They'll leave France. They'll take all the job opportunities that they might have generated with them, won't they?
Well, let's see if that actually happens. We're always being threatened by the rich that they're going to do this. They very rarely do it. And if you look at it, maybe if we had 75% tax across Britain, across France, across Germany, then there wouldn't really be anywhere for them to go apart from their usual tax haven. So we have a situation where in all these countries, people do not pay. The richest people pay a very small proportion of their income. That has to be addressed. We pay a huge amount in defence spending, for example, something that many people feel, when there is a period of austerity, should be cut back as well. Now, in this situation, people have voted, and we're supposed to live in democracies. Maybe Angela Merkel and the people who are enforcing austerity should listen to that.
On the other hand, are not all these promises based on borrowing even more money at extortionate rates of interest?
Well, who decrees that there are extortionate rate of interest? But the banks were bailed out by our government and by governments across the world after they had recklessly lent money to people who were compensating for their low wages in order to, and therefore borrowing money and getting easy credit. Why should these people now be charging interest? Why should they be saying to the people in Greece and other countries that you are having to suffer because of what we did? This is the message that is being sent to people, and the people in Greece and the people in France have rejected that message very, very strongly.
Right, let's bring Sam Bowman in on this. Sam, are you saying that people need to suffer whether they want to or not, and that any vote for growth is a vote for an easy way out, a kind of magical cure for which we don't have the funds?
Well, we should be looking to Berlin, because Berlin is actually the only capital city that's seeing growth in the European Union at the moment. It isn't a question between austerity and growth. It's a question of austerity plus growth, and that's really the only option we have. What we should be doing is looking at how Germany's gotten to where it is today by making labour market reforms in the 2000s, where basically it's much easier for German firms to hire and fire people, reducing taxes on labour as they have in Germany, which is good for people at the bottom because it means they can take more of their money home, and it's good for companies because it means they can hire people at a lower price, and reducing our public expenditure, because right now Britain has the second highest public deficit in the European Union, second only to Greece. Really, there is no alternative. There's nothing we can do except cut. The only reason we're not in a Greek situation is because we've made the correct, approached the correct moves that are needed to be made to public expenditure.
Okay, you're going to have to help me. You're going to have to help me out here, because austerity plus growth sounds to me like an oxymoron. How can you possibly have the two things at the same time?
Growth comes from the private sector, not from the government. The government spending crowds out private sector growth, and when you have government spending 50% of the economy, as we do, as we do right now, as we have right now, the government spending 50% of the economy, we are not going to get that bottom-up growth we need. What we want is austerity. I would call it austerity plus.
On the Olympics.
Just give him a chance.
Austerity plus cut back the state, make it easier for private sector companies to move in, but also cut back on regulation, cut back on the things that the state does that stops the private sector from generating that growth. So make it easier to hire and fire people, make it easier to set up companies, take away a lot of the regulation we have now so that that growth can come from the private sector so that we can create those jobs and forget about the magic bullet.
Is he making sense, Lindsey?
No, I think this is complete fantasy. Firstly, it is very easy to hire and fire people in this country. There's very little security in most people's jobs, which is one reason that people aren't spending money, that they both don't earn enough, but also their jobs aren't secure, they feel precarious. That's one problem that is happening, but also there are huge amounts of public spending that are going on at the moment. We spend $5 billion a year on the war in Afghanistan. We have spent $13 billion on the Olympics.
That's right.
Now,
They're all wastes of money. I agree with you. We should be cutting them.
Well, the truth of the matter is, though, it is this government that you support that is doing this, and at the same time, it has cut taxes for the very richest people, which it did in the budget last month, and it is saying that the poorest people are having to pay more. This is what people across Europe are objecting to. And when you come along and say, we just have to put up with this austerity time and time again, why should people have their living standards cut when the richest don't have theirs cut? Why should it be that people have to work till 67 or 68 in order to get a pension?
As it is right now, the top 1% in Britain pay 25% of all taxes.
And so they
it's
should.
A myth.
They are
it's a
people
myth
who are millionaires
that the
and
people at the top
billionaires.
are freeloading. It's a complete myth.
It is.
In France, when they bring in the 75% tax rate, there are only 2,000 people in France who pay that tax rate. They're going to be moving to places like London, Switzerland, the US.
Well, maybe
if
we should
have,
impose
if we don't,
tax
if we
on
don't
them
cut our
here.
taxes to attract people like that, we can forget about any kind of growth.
Lindsey, if you translate what you're saying into people's own homes, are you not saying, why should we not have a pair of shoes to go to that party? Why should we not have an extra piece
Vanessa,
of cake in addition to lunch? Why should we not redecorate the house? Why shouldn't we? We ought to be able to. And people listening will be thinking, yeah, of course we want to. We'd love to. It'd be really great. But where's the money coming from?
But the reality of the situation, as you know, is not like that. We have a situation around the country where millions of people are finding it hard to drive their cars because petrol is so expensive, to be able to send their kids to university because the fees are now $9,000 a year, to actually, some families actually cannot afford decent food to eat every week. This is a reality, not just for a few people in this country, for millions of people, which is why the Tories and the Liberals did so badly in the elections last week, because people in this country too are fed up with austerity. And I think we are now reaching
every single party in this country is offering austerity. In fact, Francois Hollande.
Okay, here's a question for you both. Is there any end to austerity? Is anybody suggesting we will have to endure it for X period of time and then we will relax the reins and then we will be able to live a little better, standards will rise? When is the end?
Well, the current budget deficit projection is that the books will be balanced by 2017. Personally, I don't have much confidence in that. I think it might go on for a bit longer if we don't have the deregulatory measures in the labour market especially, but also on things like corporation tax and corporation governance, unless we have the deregulation that we need to create that private sector growth, because really it is growth that we need. Balancing the books is only half the story.
Everybody says it's growth, but actually the policies of the deficit reduction are leading to stagnation, to recession and to austerity. That is the truth of the matter. And if we do not address this, the misery is being piled on people. You can see the way in which actually 60% of people voted for anti-austerity parties in Greece, including 7% for the fascists for the first time. This is the way that society will go unless we start investing.
Greece is a great example of a country that did not implement austerity, by the way. The Greek government refused to implement austerity. It bailed out its banks, which it should not have done.
Been trying to force austerity on its people for
the
the
Greek
last
government
2
did not
years.
impose austerity, and now look where they are.
But
The question is when, not if.
Is an anti-austerity vote a vote for jam today? When really you can't afford jam today. It's about waiting until
we
you can.
We live in one of the richest parts of the world. We live in one of the richest corners of the world. We should not have to have people in Greece being given food rations because they can't afford to go and buy food. We should not be having 10% of our populations across the Eurozone, including many, many young people, out of work. What kind of a crazy society
It's all
is
very
this?
well to say
And
that
we
you're
have to
against
really
poverty.
change this.
I'm also against poverty, and the reason I want to fix that, the way to fix that is to make more jobs available. The only way to do that is to make the labour market and the private sector more dynamic.
All right, thanks to you both. Thanks to Lindsey German. Thanks to Sam Bowman. And of course, we'd like to hear from you. Where do you think we British should turn? Towards Paris or towards Berlin? It's 0500 288 after defeating Nicolas Sarkozy.